This time on Flames This Week, a special half hour with NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman talking about the chances for expansion in Canada, the consistency of discipline, drug policy, and the chances of NHL players playing in future Olympics. That's Gary Bettman, starting now. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Flames This Week. I'm Larry Day, along with a special guest, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman. Thanks for being with us, Gary. I know you have a crazy schedule, so we appreciate the time. How many air miles do you rack up a year?
I haven't counted the miles, but I think it's something like 100 flights in the course of a year.
It's nice to have you here to watch a Flames game, and I guess we're just on the cusp of you celebrating a 17th anniversary as NHL Commissioner. It seems like the years have just flown by. Is that the way it looks to you?
They seem to have flown by, but when you put it like that, you're making me feel a little old today. But I've had and I'm having a great time. I love what I do, and you couldn't do this and take those 100 flights a year if you weren't passionate about what you were doing.
It's a job with many challenges. The NHL brought you in from the NBA after 12 years in marketing and legal over at the NBA to help grow the game in the United States. I think that was job one for you. How have you done?
Well, that's really for others to say. I do believe that in terms of total attendance, total revenues, total reach, the NHL has never been stronger. That doesn't mean there isn't much more work to be done, but the foundation that we've laid is pretty strong.
Well, there was a lot of expansion into the South, Atlanta, Nashville. A couple of teams moved south, Minnesota to Dallas, then you put a new team in Minnesota, Columbus. A lot of expansion in the U.S. In fact, two Canadian teams moved south, Quebec to Denver, which was very successful. Winnipeg to Phoenix, not so successful, at least long term. When you look at all of that, Canadians are saying, hey, what about us?
And that's a fair comment. And we have always tried to avoid relocation. We believe we have a covenant with our fans, and we don't like breaching that covenant by moving franchises. It's not just about the team that you're moving. It's about any fan looking and saying, well, how can they do that? And
well, let me just interrupt you, though, because you've moved 4 franchises south. Well, two Canadians and a couple of others.
Let me finish. And what happens is sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you have no choice but to move a franchise. And when I say no choice, we worked very hard this summer in Phoenix, A, to enforce our rules, and B, to try and stabilize the franchise and make it work there under what had been created as difficult circumstances. And then people have said, well, you didn't do that in Winnipeg and Quebec City. That's not true. What happened in Winnipeg and Quebec City is the ownership of both franchises at the time said the economic model is not sustainable in the absence of a new arena. And there was no new arena forthcoming. While these are public infrastructure improvements, there was no governmental entity that was willing to build a new arena, and there was no basis upon which private financing was going to make any sense. A franchise, when you cannot find somebody who wants to own it in a particular location, then has no choice but to move. We tried very hard in both Quebec City and Winnipeg and in Minnesota and in Hartford to find an alternative to moving, but none were available. Having said that, we know circumstances change over time. There is a new arena, relatively new in Winnipeg, maybe a little small, maybe not. We'll have to see if it comes to that. The premier of Quebec and the mayor of Quebec City have been to see me, and they're looking at the possibility of building a new arena. So while we're not looking to relocate, and I don't think it's the right time to expand, particularly...
Why not?
Particularly in the face of a recession.
Okay.
And we're looking to make sure that we have 30 healthy franchises. But if we get to the point where we're going to relocate, or we choose to expand as a league, then there are markets in Canada we're going to look at very, very closely. I do not have this master list that ranks cities, you know.
Okay, well, let me ask you about one everybody's talking about, and that's Hamilton, Southern Ontario, where there's a big population base there, huge hockey fans. They do have an arena.
The arena is an old-style arena. They're going to need a new arena in Southern Ontario, I believe, or a substantially renovated arena, if that turns out to be the right location.
Wouldn't it be a healthier team than in Phoenix, though, in terms of revenue? Is the problem there really it's Toronto's territory or Buffalo's territory?
You know, we're being a little negligent in looking at the history. There were people who, 1998, 99, 2000, 2001, who said there was only going to be one team left in Canada. And they were saying, wouldn't our clubs be more successful because the Canadian dollar was at 65 cents if Calgary and Edmonton and Ottawa and Vancouver moved to the United States? And we said no. We have fans there. We owe it to them. It's the point I made before about the covenant with our fans. So when Edmonton and Calgary were having difficult times, we didn't abandon those markets. When Ottawa, Buffalo, and Pittsburgh were all in bankruptcy, we didn't abandon those markets. And the 5 franchises I've just named are all incredibly successful. So to say, well, a team would do better somewhere else than in Phoenix, that's not the point. Our obligation is to try and make it work in Phoenix. And if it doesn't, then you deal with that unfortunate circumstance.
So you still have some problem children, if I could use that expression, a few franchises that would like to get higher attendance. Is one of the reasons, I understand this covenant with fans argument. It's very good when you look at the historical perspective. In other words, patience is a virtue.
And in fact, our performance in that regard backs up the words.
Is one of the other things you're considering, though, to really build a healthy television contract, a national contract in the United States, you need that geographic diversity?
Well, your footprint's important as you're trying to have a national contract, but none of these issues stand in a vacuum. Obviously, if a team is not sustainable where it is because either the losses are too great or nobody wants to own it, then you have to deal with that reality. But as long as somebody, for example, in Phoenix now, there are people who want to step on own the franchise. On that basis, it makes no sense to abandon the market. It's not about where you might be doing better at any particular point in time, because I remember when this building was half empty, and I remember when the ownership group was struggling over what to do. And thank goodness for Calgary, this ownership group stood by the league, stood by the franchise, and most importantly, stood by the people of Calgary in saying, we're going to make this work here.
Okay, give me the list of the best 3 Canadian spots to put new teams.
You know, I'll tell you where we've gotten expressions of interest.
Yes.
And they're obvious. Winnipeg, Quebec City, and Southern Ontario.
How soon could that happen?
As I said, we're looking to avoid relocation of existing franchises, and we're not looking to expand right now in this current economic climate. We're doing pretty well under the circumstances, but this isn't the time I think you look to expand. I can't put a timetable on it, but I can tell you that if ownership comes forward, prospective ownership, in those markets at a point in time when a franchise is in play, either by virtue of relocation or because we're going to expand, it's going to get consideration like any place else, no less than any place else. And in fact, we understand the benefits of making sure our game is as strong as possible in Canada. I mean, one of the reasons we went through the work stoppage was not to just make sure that the Canadian clubs could survive, but that they could thrive. And that's what we've seen. All 6 clubs are doing very well now as a result of what this league did as a whole. And before the
now
work
it's a level playing field for payroll, right?
For everything. Yeah. And even before the work stoppage, when the Canadian clubs were struggling with a weak dollar, we initiated the Canadian Assistance Program to subsidize the teams and make sure that we were mitigating the difficulties they were having with the economics.
Isn't the strong Canadian dollar one of the reasons why your revenues are very healthy now? Because you've got healthy franchises and a strong Canadian dollar. It makes a difference to your balance sheet, right?
Actually, I know people say that, but that's not entirely true. The Canadian dollar being stronger is phantom revenue. The cap goes up as a function of it, but it really doesn't inure to the benefit of the league as a whole. What it does is it means that the Canadian clubs can pay for the player costs in slightly less expensive dollars. The fact of the matter is, in native currency last season, in the face of the recession, our revenues grew 5%.
Not bad. We'll take a break. We'll be back with Commissioner Bettman right after this.